almost didn't get this live video because I was in the middle of meditation. Next thing I know, it's 3 hours later and I'm waking up from sleep. And I was like, do I really have to do this video? Can I just continue sleeping? But then I thought, oh, well, I did promise to do the video, right? So if you've just joined us, my name is Vangile Makwakwa, and I am the host here at the Wealthy Money Magicians Group. And I'm also the founder of Wealthy Money, where I teach and coach women to release their ancestral money stories so that they can live their best lives, okay? So if you've just joined us, say hi. Okay, so yesterday I spoke about doing this live video on perfectionism, right? So yesterday I spoke about fitting in, and I talked about how that's also the fear of not fitting in, and the fear of losing love also stems from our fear of not being perfect, right? And the fear of being judged. So we have this thing about perfection, and how we don't take action until we feel like all the ducks are in a row and everything is perfect, and then we just don't show up unless everything is perfect because we think people will judge us, and that blocks us financially, right? So I think this is really, really important. So don't mind me, I'm still like rearranging my hair from sleep, right? And I've only been awake again for like just about 30 minutes, just reflecting on this topic and where I want to take it. Okay, so let's talk a little about this idea of needing to be perfect. Okay, so perfectionism is an actual thing that holds us back. So when we feel like we need to be perfect, we believe that we need to show up in the world in a particular manner. And often this perfectionism is a symptom of something deeper, which is the deeper belief that we are not good enough as is, right? That, oh, if I want to do A, B, C, D, I still need to do A, B, C, D. So I am not good enough as I am. I need to basically hype myself up or make myself better or add more qualifications. And I see this all the time, right? Like people will say, I want to go out and start a business, but before I can do that, I need to do A, B, C, D. I need to go learn about entrepreneurship. I need to do this. I need to do that. But I often say, what if you can do that and run the business at the same time? So you can do things concurrently. So often we are the people that hold ourselves back because we think we're not good enough as we are. So we basically hold ourselves back in terms of showing up for our own lives. And that has such a huge financial impact in our lives because if we're coming with this energy of I'm not good enough and I need to be perfect, then you're attracting energetically the same kinds of people into your life. So imagine you're going for a job interview. And I mean, we'll talk about entrepreneurship soon because I don't know much about jobs, but I feel called to do this analogy, right? So imagine you're going for a job interview, and in your job interview, you show up, but you have this belief that I am not perfect. I still need to do A, B, C, D before I can consider myself the perfect candidate for this job. Well, every question that you're asked, and you have this underlying belief, there'll be some kind of apology, right? If you feel like you need to apologize for even being there. So often you'll find a reason to make them doubt you or whatever, or even if they don't doubt you and you ace the interview, Then they ask you about salary, and this is really key, right? Then the first thing that you're going to do is you're not going to, as opposed to if you have confidence and you're like, as I am, I'm okay, I'll learn on the job or something, you're going to underprice yourself, right? Because you're thinking, I'm not enough. I need more qualifications. I need A, B, C, D. So suddenly you're going to underprice yourself in terms of how you show up in the job. When they ask about salaries, you'll negotiate a lower salary. Or maybe when it comes to promotion and annual reviews and they ask, do you have a question? Instead of saying, oh, I'd like a higher salary now, I want to get promoted, you're waiting on them to say, hey, you've made it. So you don't get into the mode of asking for what you deserve and what you want. And again, let me know if this makes sense and if this resonates with you, right? So now imagine the same situation, but in terms of entrepreneurship. You believe I need to be perfect to do A, B, C, D. So this is often something that I see with people in, say, different industries. So you enter an industry as an entrepreneur, but you feel like even if you've made just a little bit of progress on something, you feel like, I'm not perfect. Like, people are going to judge me. Hi, Impo. So you feel like people will judge me on certain things. So then you basically shut down, right? So imagine you're a fashion designer or you make accessories or something like that, right? So you think that I need to be perfect. And what we often do when we struggle with perfectionism is that we look out externally and we look at everyone else and we think, oh, but oh my God, the way that she's designing that, the way that she's doing those handbags, the way that she's creating those shoes is just amazing. Her designs are perfect, as opposed to, this is what I bring, that there's something unique about my product. So we basically get lost in comparison, because when you're thinking, I'm not good enough and I'm not perfect, then you have to ask, perfect in comparison to what? Who determines the standard for perfection? Who determines the standard for good enough? So often it's not just about us saying that we're not perfect. It's that we already have an image of what perfection looks like and what perfection should be. And often that image is somebody else, right? It's other people in our space. So when we're going into this mode of we're not perfect, we're actually in comparison mode. We're comparing ourselves to other people and, oh, we're not perfect because they are perfect. So there's an image of perfection that we hold, and we basically have to explore what perfection looks like to us, right? And also, the interesting thing about perfection and not good enough, and this is something that I often talk about with clients, is that the whole idea, whenever people say to me, I'm not perfect, I say, okay, define what perfection would look like, right? And then also when they say, I'm not good enough, then I simply ask, what does good enough look like? Right? So who would you be if you were good enough, right? You need to allow yourself to go there, because you'll start to realize that the goalpost is forever moving. So first we go, I'll be good enough or I'll be perfect if I lose, I don't know, 20 pounds or 20 kilograms or whatever, and then I'll just be perfect. Then I can finally allow myself to go for that job. Then I can allow myself to show up for this relationship or do A, B, C, D. But every time we do that, we hold ourselves back, because we're saying, wow, and especially when it comes to money, right? Am I frozen? Okay, I'm not frozen. Okay, so especially when it comes to money, we say, I'll make this amount when. right? But the goalpost is constantly moving, because as soon as you get to that image of what perfection and good enough looks like, often what happens is that there'll be a new goalpost, because there'll be a new standard of perfection that you've set, and there'll be a new standard of good enough that you've set. So basically, this whole thing isn't even about our quest for perfection. It's about our inner child not feeling that they are good enough as is, and that they are perfect as is. And it basically holds us back from going after our goals. And then also, because of the fear of not being good enough, what happens is, because of the way that we see ourselves, hi Basitane, so the way that we see ourselves, right, is also key, because that's how those are the people that we will have in our lives, that will reflect our view of ourselves. That's who we will attract. And this is really, really key to understand, that almost everyone in our lives is a mirror reflection of who we are. So when we self-criticize and we go, I am not enough, I am not perfect, almost guaranteed that the people that you will attract in your life, be it friends, be it clients, be it lovers, all these people are often going to be a reflection of this deeper conversation that you're having with yourself. And sometimes you're not even aware of this deep belief and this deep conversation, right? Because that's life. We're not always aware of our deepest thoughts. But thank goodness that sometimes we get to attract people that are our mirror images. And it's kind of funny how that happens, right? Because you can have the most amazing friends, and then once in a while they'll just say something that basically triggers that very thing, or compare you to someone in a way that completely triggers the way that you compare yourself, not to the same person, but to other people. So just being aware of that. And maybe your family does it, maybe your mom does it, maybe all that. For me, I used to see it all the time. I used to somehow date these guys that were really, really great, but every so often, almost once a day, they'd say something that was so critical, and just in passing, but that it would hurt. And most people would say, but that's not such a big deal compared to everything that they've done. But it would hurt because it was a reflection of what was already going on deep within me. So it was triggering me. It would hurt because it was a trigger, and because it was a reflection of something already deeper. So if it wasn't a trigger, it wouldn't hurt, and I wouldn't mind it, and I probably wouldn't have noticed it, because it would be just something that happens every other day, right? So just being aware of that. And then when we have that fear, then everything out, then the people around us start to reflect that. So instead of having support in our lives, we have criticism, because we haven't learned how to support ourselves. I can't say how often I hear people say, well, I have no support in my life. Nobody supports me. Nobody does A, B, C, D, and I'm alone. But have you learned how to support yourself? Have you learned how to be your greatest source of support, your greatest fan? Because everyone around you will, and again, people are not going to react based on how you show up, how you dress. They're reacting from the deepest levels of your energy. So instead of fighting the non-support, or fighting the critics, or fighting the people that are judging us, we have to sometimes stop and say, wait a minute, how am I being this to myself, right? So how am I not showing up for myself? How am I not supporting myself? How am I judging myself, right? How am I criticizing myself? And that's where the work lies. That's the work that we need to do, because until we know how to do that and heal ourselves at the deepest levels, and sometimes it may be even something ancestral. Like for me, I've seen how women in my family for generations have been totally like just nitpicking at each other, right? And it's almost like from birth, it's just like mothers nitpick at daughters, and it doesn't seem like a big thing, but by the time everyone's older, people are already judging themselves. So because they've been judged from birth, since like my great grandmother, who was probably judged by her by her grandmother or her mother, right? So it's just like small things. So you start to second guess yourself, you start to doubt yourself. So obviously with that, when you show up in spaces, that doubt is often mirrored right back at us. People are doubting us, people are judging us. So not to be scared of that, but to almost sit with it, which is actually a deep challenge, right? Because we're really human. And the fear of judgment is also, in a way, the fear of losing love, the fear of no longer fitting in. So it's something